hold up, I am on my way, I'm in motion. Let's go to the ocean. Yeah, let's go outside. We can hang out on the beach without freezing. Yeah, isn't that amazing?
Welcome to Crafty Beach. This is Julie. Today I put together 4 adorable coastal fall DIYs using supplies from the Dollar Tree. We have rope pumpkins, mermaid pumpkins, a coastal fall sign, and a wood slice pumpkin. I had so much fun putting these together, so let's go. Okay, the first DIY is a rope pumpkin. This is going to require the wider white rope is what the one I use, the 6-foot one, and 2 of these giant plastic bowls from the Dollar Tree. I thought if I put 2 of these together, it would kind of give me a giant pumpkin shape. Now, guys, this is going to be a big piece, and it took way more rope and way more time than I thought it was going to take. It probably took me about 45 minutes to put this guy together. So it's large. I have my camera set on wide angle so we can get this whole thing in the shot. But what I want to do is try to just glue these together, one upside down on top of another to give me that great pumpkin shape. And so I just do a bead of hot glue as quickly as I can around the top so it does not harden up. And then the trickiest part on this project is just trying to sit the top bowl on there and get it on there flush. It does kind of have a lip around it, which I wish it didn't. I thought about cutting that part off because it did make the rope stick out a little bit there, but I kind of needed something to glue it together with. Now, it didn't feel stable, so I'm just doing masking tape like all the way around it to try to help hold it together. And then I'm going to do that the other direction. I kind of wish I would have done more masking tape because it kind of helped that transition where the little lip sticks out around the center part. But you guessed it, we're going to cover this whole thing in that white nautical rope from the Dollar Tree. So to start out, I'm actually going to leave a tiny open circle because I was thinking about where I would want to have the pumpkin stem, and I kind of wanted to leave some place where I could attach it to the bowl and not the rope. So I just glue one section at a time. I glue about as much as I think I can get done before my hot glue starts to set up. Now, when you start working with this, I would recommend cutting the plastic off both ends of the rope first, so that you'll be ready to go when you get to that point. Since the rope was only like 6 to 7 feet long, I have a lot of transitions where I had to stop one rope and start a new one. In those areas, I just try to kind of get them close, kind of keep them trimmed up, and it kind of fades away. I mean, since I had to use 11 and a half packages of that white rope. Can you believe I had that much in my stash? Well, now I have 0. And my store hasn't had any the last couple times I've been there. But you could also do the other size white rope or even brown rope as well. Any of that would work. I chose the wider rope because I thought it would be less times winding it around there. But again, I had no idea how much rope this is going to take. I wanted a large statement piece to go in my entryway for fall. And this would make a great centerpiece as well. It would also make a great outdoor decoration if you wanted to weatherproof it a little bit. But whenever I run out of rope, I just start a new one and keep gluing around, trying to kind of push them down and keep them flush. They have these bowls, these plastic bowls at Dollar Tree in lots of different colors. I chose white because I knew that I was going to be doing white rope, and I was thinking if, you could see through any of the gaps on the rope, it would blend in nicely, and it did. and just keep working. I was like, at this point, I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I'm going to have enough rope. And I had a partial piece here at the end that saved me. So I got it all wrapped, yay! And again, the wrapping took me about 45 minutes. It took a while. So put on a good YouTube video or song and wrap away. Now for the sections of the pumpkin, I want to do rope as well. I'm going to switch it up and use the skinnier white nautical rope. I thought about using the brown for a contrast, but I kind of liked the, monochromatic of this being white. So I just start there at where I'm going to put the stem, and I'm just gluing this around. This first piece, I go all the way around with just one piece and wrap it all the way around. And I want to have like the sections of the pumpkin to kind of make it look more like a pumpkin. I cut it when I get to the stem area, leaving that part open as well. And then I'm going to start on my next section. Now on this one, once I get to the bottom, I'm going to cut it because I don't want it to overlap, because I want the bottom of my pumpkin to be flat so it will sit properly. And then just start on the other side of that first rope and keep going. And then I'm going to do the same exact thing here on this last row. And as you can see, you can kind of see the lip there. So if you can find a bowl that doesn't have that lip, that would work even better. It doesn't really bother me too much though, because it's such a cool piece. So we have a rope pumpkin. So for this stem, I got this great piece of driftwood at Sanibel when we went. I did not get great shells this last time I went, but I got really great driftwood. So a nice mangled piece. I'm just trying to glue that on. It's pretty tall, so I was trying to get it, the glue to dry there, and then we can decorate this a little bit more. It's a big pumpkin, so I thought it needed a nice big stem. And you can use whatever you've got. If you don't have driftwood, you could always use a branch from your yard. Now I wanted a little bit of fabric to decorate around the stem. I'm just going to cut a piece of burlap and just kind of cut like a square of it, cutting off the edges because this one was kind of finished. And then I'm going to cut the center out so I can just kind of lay that around my little driftwood stem. Just like that. Just to provide a little bit of brown, a little bit something for me to work with some decorations. Now for the little curly tendrils, I thought I might as well use white rope since I've used it for everything else. So I'm just going to take one of those skinny ropes and untie it, and it gives me that naturally like curly appearance. And then I just need to kind of arrange it around my stem. I kind of liked it better just kind of overlapped like that. So I'm just going to hot glue that to each other so that'll kind of stay on there. And then I kind of wanted another one, so I'm just going to use another piece of that, kind of cut off a third one and glue that on as well. Then I wanted to make this a nice coastal fall pumpkin, so I thought we would decorate it more with seashells and such. And this part turned out so cute. So I just grabbed some various seashells from the Dollar Tree and started kind of arranging them around the stem. I want to do a little beachy scene around here, so I'm going to start gluing those to the burlap, kind of standing that one up a little bit. And then I'm going to use some of these little succulent picks from the Dollar Tree. I just had an old succulent, and I had one that was on like a clip, I guess. And I'm just going to kind of glue those on. I like those colors together with it. I think they look nice and coastal, and they look great with the seashells. Then I thought I'd bring in a little bit more color. I'm going to do one of those little bluish green shells from the Dollar Tree as well. Kind of adjusting my tendrils to see where I like them. And there was still a little bit of an opening there, so I'm going to use some of these little tiny starfish that I get on Amazon. I'll try to remember to post a link below for those. They're so cute. And I'm just going to kind of glue that one up where you can see it. adorable. And then I have room for one more seashell. So I'm going to do one of the little mini seashells from the Dollar Tree that come in the little jars. We have a little succulent garden full with shells and starfish on top of our coastal pumpkin. And this is how it looks in my entryway on a table. It is large and really cool. I think it's a really interesting piece. It's not that heavy. If you wanted to use it outside, you could always put rocks or something inside to weigh it down a little bit. Okay, our next DIY, I wanted to make a mermaid pumpkin. So I'm going to use one of these little wooden mermaid tails from the Shore Living line at Dollar Tree, a wood pumpkin from Dollar Tree, and just an old sign I have from Dollar Tree. I just needed it to be like a rectangular shape. So we're going to go ahead and take the hangers off of all of those. Trying to get that sign unbowed. I'm not a big fan of the Dollar Tree signs because they get bowed, but when you stack them together and glue them together, they become a lot sturdier. This has got a lot going on the back. It's got glitter. It's got a galvanized metal snowflake that I'm going to try to pop off with a little bit of heat. And I just want to clean that up. I'm not going to use this side, of course, but I always like to have a finished back on all of my projects. So I'm just going to use some cheap wood contact paper from the Dollar Tree and cut a piece off a little larger than the back and smooth that down as well as I can with all the glitter and everything going on back there. And this stuff is so thin, it's super easy to cut. All you got to do is use a sanding block from the Dollar Tree and go around all the edges, and you now have a finished back on your project. Now I'm going to use the back side as my front. It's brown, so I'm going to kind of work with that. I want this to look like a really driftwoody, really weathered piece of wood. Now the hangers are on the side, and I want this to be like a horizontal sign. So I'm just going to use a little bit of spackle to fill in those holes. Pretty easy patch. And we can start decorating this. Now the first thing I want to do is go in with ivory. I'm just using ivory acrylic and a foam brush, and I'm being very sloppy. I want like some of that wood from the back of that to shine through, especially around the edges, because that's going to be the most visible parts of this back sign. So that's kind of how I did it, and then I'm just going to go in and give it a good dry, and we can distress this to make it look like wood. So we're going to use Antique Wax by Waverly and a chunky brush, and just working in one direction, trying not to go too crazy. I'm trying to get a good layer of brown on there. Then I'm going to follow that up with a baby white, kind of blend it together. To give me that cool driftwood, very weathered look. I want this to look really weathered. So I'm distressing it a bit more with some more antique wax and following that up with a baby wipe, trying to get the level of distress that we're going for there. And I like that. Now for the holes for the hanger, we covered those up. So I thought we'd make a fun coastal rope hanger. So using that thinner brown rope from the Dollar Tree, I'm just going to tie a knot in one end and then tie a knot in the other. And I'm just using a ruler at the top there for kind of reference so I can get this on there fairly centered. And we're going to attach this rope hanger to the front of the frame so it'll be visible, and I think it's a nice little coastal touch. So kind of like doing like a 2-inch, 10-inch here, trying to figure out where I'm going to put it. And I'm just going to simply staple it on. Now, normally I don't use my staple gun on these Dollar Tree signs because they're so thin, the staple would go right through. But with this combination of this thicker rope and that sign, it worked out perfectly. So I just stapled that to the front. And now we can start working on our wood pumpkin. I love these plain wood pieces from the Dollar Tree. They're so easy to DIY. And I want this one to look like mermaid scales. So I'm going to try the technique where you use hot glue to make mermaid scales. But I was a little worried with such a big surface that it would kind of go all over the place. So I thought I kind of needed reference lines. So I'm just using a ruler and a pen and drawing on approximately even like base lines. Now I used an ink pen because that's what I had, and I kind of wish I hadn't because it was a little bit harder to cover up. Maybe a pencil or something a little softer would be better. Then I'm going to use that line for reference. I'm going to go down and up and down and up to that line. So I get a nice even row of mermaid scales. Now, I don't want it to be as thick as the line, probably about half as thick as the line. So my next row, I'm going to go about halfway to my reference line. And you kind of sandwich those in between each other. You start and stop about halfway between the scale above it. And then I'm just going to keep doing that. Now you want to try to be as careful as you can when you get to the end with your little stringies of hot glue, because any of the strings that get left on there, when you go to paint this, they're totally going to show up. So I'm just kind of taking my time, trying to do one row at a time, going about halfway and then to my line, about halfway and then to my line, until we get this whole pumpkin filled with hot glue and mermaid scales. Now the top kind of needs a little scales too, so I'm going to go ahead and put a few up there as well. And this is the time you're going to want to clean up any of those little plastic strings that are anywhere. When you start painting it, you're totally going to notice that. And this hot glue sets up pretty fast. And it's going to give me a fun little mermaid surface there to start working with. Now the first coat I'm going to do is just ivory acrylic. Going to go over trying to get it in any of the places. I'm also trying to cover up all those reference lines that I had, and that's when I can start noticing little strings of hot glue that I didn't see. This is definitely the time to get them off before the paint dries and you're stuck with that. So I did a pretty clean job. After one coat, I'm just going in with a second coat of that ivory acrylic. Again, trying to clean up any strings as I see them. Now I want this to look like a very beachy blue. I kind of want it to be blue and white together. Now this color is Caribbean blue acrylic, and while the ivory was still wet, I'm going over it with that blue. So it kind of mixes the blues and the ivories together. And I want it to kind of be varied, like a little bit darker in some places, a little bit lighter in others, to give me that really fun mermaid coloring in there. So I get a pretty good coat of blue. I want to make sure I get blue in all the little scales here. And give that a quick dry with my heat gun, and then we can distress this further. I'm going to use more ivory and my chunky brush, and I'm going to dry brush all over. That's going to start bringing out that detail of all those great mermaid scales that we put on there. Guys, I think this is my favorite project I did today. It just turned out so sweet, and it's so unique. I've never seen anything like it, and we all need a mermaid pumpkin, right? So I'm going to glue a little bit of twine to the back of my stem, and I'm just going to use that Dollar Tree thin twine and just simply wrap that around my stem to give me a nice little coastal pumpkin stem for our project. Kind of just one row to mostly cover the blue that we have on there. And then I'm just going to cut that off and glue that down on the back. And that's an easy coastal pumpkin stem. Now for the little mermaid tail part, that was a 3-pack that were tied together. I'm just going to use one. And I kind of wanted this to be ivory to kind of be a contrast against the blue and the wood. And so I'm just going to use some ivory acrylic and go over the front of this tail. I just left the twine on there and tried to work around it. Now this has that great burned in mermaid pattern on there. So I was trying to kind of just stain it a little bit, but I also want it to be ivory. You could still see the pattern through, but after a couple coats of ivory, it was kind of hard to see it. So I'm just going to go for that ivory finish, and then I can go in and kind of recreate that pattern on there. I can see it through the paint enough where I can just kind of draw over it. So I'm just going to use a brown marker and just kind of draw that mermaid pattern back on there so that you can see it more. I didn't want to lose all those cool details. But it's a little too perfect, so then I'm going to dry brush over with a little bit of ivory to make it look way more muted and way more weathered. And then I just want to tie this around my stem, and we'll have a little dangly mermaid tail here in front of the pumpkin, and it can just kind of hang down freely like that. I thought about putting a word on it, but I just loved it so much, I just left it alone. Now it's time to put our little mermaid pumpkin on our little driftwood sign that we made for it. And I love the contrast. It looks so pretty together. I'm just going to glue that on with some Gorilla Glue hot glue. And make sure I get all the surfaces glued down, and that sign below is going to become a lot straighter now that it has another large wood sign glued to it. And that's all there is to this DIY. I think it just turned out so beautiful. I really love it. I think I'm going to have this in my kitchen. It's going to go perfectly in there for fall. And let me show you how it looks hanging. So pretty. I really like the driftwood touches to that back sign. I think it really brings out the little mermaid pumpkin. Hey guys, I wanted to tell you about our private Facebook group. I will post a link below. It's just a great Facebook group for you to post whatever you've been working on. I would love to see it. And you can see what all the other Crafty Beach Bumps have been working on too. They're so talented. I'm also on Instagram, TikTok, and Pinterest at Crafty Beach on YouTube. Okay, I wanted to do a fall sign, like a long skinny sign. So I'm going to use one of these fall pumpkin signs from the Dollar Tree and one of these long wood ones. This one happens to be a pumpkin sign, but it doesn't need to be because that is all going to be covered up. Now, I really like the white, orange, blue, orange of this fall sign, but of course, the fall letters are covered in a massive amount of glitter, and I just can't. I want this to look very coastal, rustic, and hand-painted. So the first thing I'm going over with a very heavy coat of Mod Podge, trying to seal down all that glitter. I'm not even going to bother trying to sand it because it's just going to make a mess. Now I'm going to go over all of those letters with a sturdy white paint pen. I say sturdy because that glitter from the Dollar Tree can really rip up your paint pen. And do a layer of white to try to give me sort of a base coat, and again seal down that glitter. I really wish they would stop using glitter on these signs. Now I'm going to go in with just a very tiny brush and some ivory acrylic and just start painting those letters as well. I don't really have an ivory paint pen, and I thought like the actual paint and a paintbrush might give me a better coverage. And I don't care if it's not perfect. It can look a little bit, I want it to look hand painted. So just going over all of those areas again, trying to be as careful as I can with that small brush to kind of recreate that lettering. Now I want to kind of distress all over, but I really want these letters to kind of pop. So I'm going to go over it with another coat. And I do end up distressing this sign a lot. And so I do have to go back and touch this up when I'm done with it. But I want all of the pumpkins to look like they're hand-painted pumpkins and not like all that paper. So I'm going to use that same ivory acrylic and a chunky brush. And just working in one direction, we're going to just try to weather all over. The only problem with doing this with that slick paper surface is when you try to follow it up with a baby wipe to kind of blend it in, it comes all the way off. So, just try to not get very much paint on your brush so you don't have to wipe off the extra and you will be fine. So I got that first coat of weathering on, and then I'm just going to use my sanding block from the Dollar Tree to kind of sand that down. That works better than the baby wipe for sure. Then I wanted more distressing, so I'm going to wipe off all of that sawdust, and we're going to go in with some antique wax by Waverly, mixed together with a little bit of ivory to give me kind of a tan distress. And we're going to distress kind of hard all over this. Again, be careful if you use the baby wipe. The sandpaper method works way better. Now, I really like those colors. I think that looks really good and hand painted, but the problem is that you couldn't hardly read fall anymore. So I'm going to have to go in with a third coat of ivory on those fall letters. And in hindsight, I probably could have just done this step last, and I wouldn't have had to do it so many times. But again, there was so much glitter on there. The more paint I put on there, the better. It's going to kind of disappear that glitter. And I like that. I think that looks good. That's a good contrast. And this is the perfect size to go on one of those long, skinny frames from the Dollar Tree. Just going to do a couple beads of hot glue, and we're going to glue that together. And again, 2 thin Dollar Tree signs together is going to give you a nice thicker sign for your wall. Now, once I have it on there, I want to give it a few more beachy coastal touches. And I'm going to use some of those little craft wood cutouts from the Dollar Tree. I have a seahorse, a dolphin, a sea turtle, a seashell. I picked out 4 different ones. And I'm just kind of dry brushing ivory over them to give me a nice weathered coastal look on each one of them, but letting a little bit of that brown craft wood show through. I love those things. They're so cute. You have to watch if they how they cut them, that you get all the little tiny pieces popped out in between. Sometimes they stay in there. And I'm just going to glue a different sea creature to the top of each one of my pumpkins, just for a nice coastal final touch to our little fall sign. And I think this turned out so cute. It definitely looks way more handmade, and it does not look cheap like a Dollar Tree sign. Now for the border, I thought we would make a fun rope border using some of that thin white nautical rope from the Dollar Tree, since that's the only kind I have now after that giant pumpkin. And I'm just taking the tape off the end, and we're just going to glue one piece all the way around our fall sign just to finish this off. It gives it a little bit more width as well, and just makes it look way nicer. And rope is always going to give you that coastal touch. So I love my Dollar Tree rope. You know, has anybody ever tried ordering the rope on dollartree.com? I wonder if they'd make you buy like 100. Probably. But your girl doesn't have any rope now. I'll have to go to there's a really large Dollar Tree in the next town that usually has boxes of it. So maybe I need to hit that one up. I've been trying to stay at a Dollar Tree because I've been trying to organize my stash, which over the 1.5 years that I've been doing this channel has grown massively. So I'm like, girl, use what you've already got. I feel like I have a Dollar Tree in my house sometimes. So I just glued that all the way around. When the rope comes together here at the end, I'm just going to cut it as close as I can and just kind of glue that down. It's not real obvious that you have an ending there. And we have a cute little coastal fall sign. Let me show you how that looks hanging in my entryway. I kind of have this weird wall, and so I have it hanging above that large pumpkin on my entryway table there, and it turned out so cute. Okay, look what I found at Goodwill. It was $2.99. It is a wood slice. Now, I actually paid full price for this because I wanted it so bad. And it kind of had like a side that was a little bit flatter. And so it stands up perfectly without having to do anything to it. Now, I'm just going to paint it. I'm using this bright blue, Caribbean blue color. I wanted this to be really blue and really fun. And we're going to make this wood slice look like a pumpkin for fall. So I'm just kind of being careful and trying to make it look a little bit like a oval shape. Working my way as close as I can around the edges. And it doesn't have to look perfect because it's going to be all coastal farmhouse. So easy to paint. This one was blank. Nobody had ever done anything with it, so it was a perfect canvas for me. Now I'm using ivory and distressing it, but kind of distressing it in a curved pattern around the sides to kind of give it a little bit of depth and lighten up that bright blue a little bit as well. And I think that looks pretty cool. I want this to look very coastal, so I thought a starfish would be fun. Now, this is one of the white plastic starfish from the Dollar Tree, from the Shore Living line. I always like to paint them ivory. I think that makes them look a little bit more realistic. So while I had the ivory paint out, I went ahead and painted that as well. And just giving everything a quick dry. I want the starfish to kind of be in the center. I'm going to put some quadrants on there, but I need to kind of know how big the starfish is going to be. So I'm going to go ahead and glue that on first for the sides that are going to be touching the wood there, the wood slice. I love how this turned out. It's so cute and it was so easy to put together. Okay, so for the little quadrants of the pumpkin, I'm going to use some of this thinner white rope from the Dollar Tree and just kind of cut out a circle. That would go great here in the middle, working around the starfish. And I'm just going to glue like a quarter at a time. Kind of shaping that as I go. In the shape that it would be like on the front of a pumpkin. And gluing that down, cutting off the end, trying to get that as close as possible to make that kind of blend together there at the bottom. Then I'm also going to use that same rope to outline the outer edges of the pumpkin. Cutting it to size and just hot gluing that around the border of the wood slice. And the same thing here on the other side. This turned out so coastal and so cute. I am in love with it and it was so easy to put together. Now for the stem, I'm going to use one of those wood stems from the Dollar Tree. I picked out a nice funky long one. And I'm just going to glue that to the top with a little bit of hot glue standing straight up. This size on the stem works really well for the size of a pumpkin. Now I want to decorate it a little bit more. I'm going to use some of that wired jute from the Dollar Tree. Cut off a fairly long piece. This stuff likes to come off the wire, so I try to work with it as little as possible. So I'm just going to simply wrap that around our little pumpkin stem. While my hot glue was still kind of wet, so it would kind of glue it together and help the stem stay on as well. Just kind of pull it out to the sides, and then I'm just going to use an ink pen to wind that, and again, working with it as little as possible because I don't want that twine to come off the wire, and very carefully trim the edges with some sharp scissors. And I think that looks pretty good. And check out these cute little leather pumpkins and leaves they have at the Dollar Tree this year. I'm going to use the one with the leaf. And I actually don't need the little leather strap on there. I think I just want the little leather leaf. I think that's going to give me a fun final touch for the top of our little pumpkin. And it's got a hole in there, and I just happen to have a little branch sticking out here on front. And so I'm just going to glue that right onto that little branch. And I don't even have to tie it on. And look how adorable this turned out. I am in love with this one as well. It's so coastal and I love the wood slice. What do you think? Let me show you how this one looks in my house. And it looks a little bright here in my lower lighting. But, oh, I love these projects and I hope you did as well. Thank you so much for watching, everyone, and thank you so much to my financial supporters on my channel. My channel is small and growing. I just hit 9,000 subscribers last night. Thank you so much. And thanks for everyone that sends me super thanks or buys me a coffee. I always have a link for that as well in my videos. Are you guys ready for the final reveal? Don't forget to comment your favorite DIY below or just say hi. Like this video, and if you haven't subscribed, we're on our way to 10K.
One way to see, one way to know. Just never look back and just letting it go. Your heart is a drum.